Hello, BookTube. Well, it's still early February, but that's never too soon to start thinking about March, right? And March has a few big BookTube events. Some older than others, but all of them appointment viewing, appointment participating. Of course, all of you are eagerly awaiting March Mystery Madness, right? That's an old BookTube event. There's also Proust Arch, which we finally tackle In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust on this channel. Not exactly a long-established event. It hasn't happened yet. Scheduling problems and whatnot. But another must-participate BookTube event for March is March of the Mammoths, which was created by Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, and he has joined his co-hosts for 2022 are Lukas at A Cruel Reader's Thesis, and Big Al Books. And I'll leave links to their announcement videos down below because they have launched March of the Mammoths for 2022. And what that means in their taxonomy, a mammoth is not just a chunker of a book, but a mega chunker of a book that is 800 pages or more. Now, the idea of March of the Mammoths is that if you have these big, monstrous books sitting on your shelves, and maybe you've just been thinking for years and putting it off that maybe now's the time for me to take that down and actually try to conquer this mountain, that maybe a little community encouragement would go a long way. And hence was born March of the Mammoths, which is encouraging you to finally take one of those huge books down off your shelf, or from your library, or from your bookstore, whatever's intriguing you, and actually embark upon it in the month of March. A month is long enough to read a book like that, if you put the time in, if you put a little elbow grease in. And I want to strongly add my note of encouragement here to encourage you to do just that. Of course, I love mammoths. I love gigantic books. I really do. For a simple reason that has to do with logistics on my part. Because I am a very fast reader. And on top of being a very fast reader, I have a huge amount of time every day to read that most people don't have. Most people have jobs or school or classes or kids or pants or hygiene of some kind or other. Most people have a lot of other things to do. They don't have somebody paying their bills. They don't have somebody making sure the laundry's folded. They don't have somebody cooking their meals. They don't get to spend all day on their fainting couch with their cute little dog. I'm talking about you, baby. She doesn't care. She's staring out the window at her hated enemy, rain. Because of those logistical differences, because I basically do nothing else, except for this week where I'm trapped in deadline hell, I'm still managing to get a lot of reading done. But because of those logistical changes, I usually don't experience an aspect of reading that I know most readers love, absolutely love, and I love it myself. And that is the feeling of getting lost in a book, where the book just sweeps you away. The author's doing everything right in order to make that happen. And suddenly you lose track of where you are in the book or when you started or even the outside world. And you don't gain that back until you have finished the story, until you've closed the last page. And I think that one of the crucial elements in making that experience, in making that lost in a book experience, is the time you spend with the book. I honestly do believe that. I don't think that happens right away. I think in almost no cases is that instantaneous. You have to spend some time with the book in order to get caught up in it, in order to lose yourself in a book. And I am robbed of that experience because I don't spend much time in a book. You give me a standard book is 240 to 320 pages. That is nothing for me. That is 2 hours. That it's not time enough for me to get lost in a book. Leaving apart the constant twittering in my ear of the critical reader, of a critical voice, which is a great way to enjoy a book, what an author's doing, a great way to savor the nuances, but it is actively working against falling in love with a book, just losing yourself in a book. That critical voice is an active measure against that. It can be swept away. I know this for a fact because it happens to me all the time. It can be swept away. The original atavistic impulse to get lost in a book is far stronger than the critical voice, but it is still there. And that critical voice, plus how fast I read a normal length book, means that usually I don't get lost in a book. Usually I just read them. And I love the feeling of getting lost in a book. The thing that will do it is if the book is very long. If the book is so long that even my reading speed still means I'm going to be spending a large amount of time in the book, then it will work. Then I can get lost in a book, which is why I love huge books for that reason. Now, I don't give them a pass. A mammoth can still disappoint that critical voice, very much so. Not many mammoths actually succeed in justifying their own exorbitant length. Most of them fail at doing that, and that's a bitter disappointment. When I get a book like that, I want it to succeed on every level, not just in carrying me away, but also in justifying how long it is. So I look forward to these kinds of books. And that's another reason why I want to encourage you to do it, because a book that's over 500 pages, 500, 600 pages, once you get up into the 800 thereabouts page range, a book like that is a different reading experience, leaving apart the exorbitant amounts of time and effort that it usually takes a normal reader to do that kind of thing. Larger books like that tend to exert their own field of gravity. They tend to feel like a different kind of reading experience. Is that a siren in the background? It's almost nostalgic. Up in Vermont, there was no noise at all. None whatsoever. That sounds like a siren. Yes, the siren is going nuts because he's trying to get through and no one's letting him. Wow, even to being distracted by a siren on the street. I've got street noise again. after just the noise of wandering quadrupeds at 3 a.m. and wind blowing through trees. Anyway, huge mammoth books like this exert their own field of gravity. They create their own world. They don't just invite you into it. That world sort of closes off around you on all sides. It's an amazing reading experience, is what I'm trying to say. Those of you who are maybe staring a little bit guiltily at these big, intimidating things on your shelves, you might be depriving yourself of an experience that you would really like. That experience, I would maintain, is not available in a shorter book. So I wanted to throw my encouragement behind March of the Mammoths, and if I remember, I'll leave links to the 3 announcement videos because they're very good and they'll give you a much clearer sense of what's going on than this incoherent ramble of mine. But I also wanted to show you some books for March. It doesn't feel like March will ever happen. I am right now, for those of you who don't usually watch my channel, I am right now in the darkest depths of a monstrous, totally unbelievable deadline. The type of thing where when I read the email announcing what this deadline was, I read it on the couch up in Vermont. I literally did not believe that I was reading it correctly. I kept backing out of the email and then going back in thinking, you must be missing something, because no one would ever do this. No one would ever ask this. And no one could ever do it, even if they were asked for it. It was asked, and I can do it. But I am right now so deep in that dark valley that to me, it doesn't feel like it will ever be March. And you know that when March comes, I'll probably have another monstrous deadline of some kind. But anyway, I want to show you some books, some candidates of mine from March of the Mammoths. We'll start with one that I proposed in a shortlist Skype session to Lukas, and he shot it down in a fusillade of profanities. I proposed this. This is an English language translation of Antonio Scurati's Son of the Century. Son of the Century. It's a big, apparently ambitious historical novel about Mussolini. And I wanted to, it comes out in April. But it's an advance copy, and that's my job. So I'm not gonna let advance copies wait until they're months. I thought this would be perfect fodder for March. And during our Skype session, Lukas said, "How long is it?" And I said, "Let me see here. It's 771 pages." And he called me every kind of name you can imagine and said, "That's not 800 pages." They're very harsh at March of the Mammoths. So apparently 771 pages doesn't count. I will read this book anyway, but there is another forthcoming book, another new release. This one comes out in April, and it definitely qualifies. We just saw it the other day. I had no idea that it was coming. This is by David Adams Cleveland, and it is called Gods of Deception. And is, believe it or not, what do you say on the back here? You're going to tell me exactly, aren't you? 944 pages. This is 944 pages. A 944 page novel about Alger Hiss. Since only 10 of you are going to even know that name, and none of you will have lived through that time period or been following it the way I was. This is basically a 1,000-page book about Algiers. And since it's an advance copy, and since it's my job to read advance copies before the month of their publication, I could certainly read Gods of Deception in March for March of the Mammoths. That qualifies. And so do my other two candidates here. I want to show you two of them. One you've seen already. I found it at a thrift shop up in Vermont when on one of the book buying expeditions that Mark and I went on. And it was in rough shape. I have reinforced it a little, but it is one of the roughest shaped books I have. Even with the reinforcing means that it won't fall apart if I read it. And that's good, because that's what I want. But this is by Robert Harvey, and it's called The War of Wars, the epic struggle between Britain and France from 1789 to 1815. And those of you who are up on your European history will know the signature event of 1789 and the signature event of 1815. This is the book. And it's a big thing. It is. I had to round off the corners. Look at the pages are all folded and discolored. This has been loved. This has been lovingly read. And I love that. That kind of damage I will definitely take. And this is 962 pages long. So it definitely counts as a mammoth. And it's also not an advanced copy, so I don't have to worry about it. I haven't read this since it first came out. When did this first come out? 2006. So that's a while ago. I haven't read this since then. I got an advanced copy from the publisher. And the finished hardcover. I've never seen it since. Maybe this is a case where maybe if I saw a hardcover of this at the Brattle here in Boston, or a newer trade paperback, maybe I would spring for it and just give this thing an honorable retirement. Although, part of me always thinks, I tend to anthropomorphize. I tend to personalize my books. Part of me thinks, if you are a book like this, and you have been battered all to hell and gone like this, and then discarded at a thrift shop, maybe what you want more than anything is for someone to not care about what shape you're in, but to give you one more read. I always think, I know that books are inanimate objects, but I always think books want to be on shelves. They want to be in a loving collection. They want someone looking at them with longing, and they want to be read. I know they're inanimate objects, but I imbue them with these feelings anyway. And finding a book like this that has obviously been read at least once and lovingly, finding it discarded in a bin in a charity shop when all it needs is a little loving care to make it physically able to sustain another reading, that kind of broke me hard. I haven't read this in, 10 years? More than 10 years. So that's one of the things I'm going to read for March of the Mammoths. And the other thing is it definitely qualifies. It's well over 1,000 pages. You wouldn't think that it would be a candidate for any kind of reading because it's a reference work. Reference works back in the day, before the internet rendered them completely obsolete, tended to be huge. It was just expected on the part of the publisher and on the part of the reader that it wasn't ever going to be anything that you carried around. It was going to be on a shelf for a lectern, and you were going to use it for research. And every once in a while, I have indulged in the readerly whim, I'm sure that some of you have had this whim, whether you've done it or not, of taking a reference work. Reference works are meant to be read, to be used, but not read, right? They're you open it to a certain thing, you pull out the information you want from that thing, and then you close it. The next time you use it, you open it to something else. Every once in a while, I like to indulge in the yen of reading a reference work from front to back, as if it were a narrative work. They aren't. It doesn't improve the experience at all. But every once in a while, I like to do that. And I'm going to do that with this book. This is, let me get the date on this. It is enormous. This came out in 2007, so a year after my other pick for March of the Mammoths. This thing came out. And this is the New York Times Guide to Essential Knowledge. Ooh. Look at the size of this thing. It's gigantic. It's 1,312 pages. And it has, in a neat little twist there, a neat little sacrilegious twist, it has an apple on the cover. A direct reference to the book of Genesis. And this is just what you would think. This is a compendium of everything. All astronomy, classical music, biochemistry, plate tectonics, politics. The whole of the U.S. Constitution is in here with annotations. Tons of literature, tons of biography, tons of natural history. Just This is a one-volume encyclopedia, an age-old tradition that is now gone. People, aside from big, elaborate visual things like the kind that DK would do that really don't translate to ebooks, although by this time they should, aside from that, these kinds of things are an absolute black hole of a loss of money to do, because everything that's in here is available at the touch of your fingertips, literally the touch of your fingertips, from 1,000 different sources instead of just one on the internet. Everything that's in here is, all the knowledge that's in here is readily available any time of the day or night without lugging around a book like this. And since I know that if I want to get a quick overview of the history of the woodwind or the rhubarb, I can go online in 5 seconds and be reading in the comfort of my own fainting couch. Since I know that I no longer have to go to my reference shelf and pull this thing down and stand there and read those sections as I did for so many years. Since I know that, it actually makes it kind of easier in a way to read this thing from front to back just as a journey, as a reading journey, rather than picking. I don't need to pick through this anymore for anything at all. If I am sitting writing a piece and I suddenly need to know the actual separate parts of the human heart and how they work in tandem with each other, I can find that information in 1/5 of a second online. And I can also find a video with a state-of-the-art, documentary-style visual representation of how those parts work. I don't even have to settle for reading about it. I can see how they work. For all I know, on YouTube, I could probably see live footage of a human heart beating, with a doctor pointing out in an operating theater what the separate parts are doing during live surgery. In other words, far, far beyond anything that a printed book like this can do. I can do that now. I never need to get up and cross the room. I never need to have 10 books like this on the shelf in front of me on my desk while I'm typing. It's all available more easily for free on my iPad than anything like this. I think that will make this easier to read as a book. We'll see. We'll see if it actually works as a book. It'll be an interesting experiment. In March, there'll be no experiments this week of any kind. This week is nose to the grindstone. But in March, I wanted to show you some things. I'm going to read the New York Times Guide to Essential Knowledge as a book. In March, I'm going to read this from front to back. So you can count during March on a whole bunch of, did you know, type insertions into my regular videos. I'm also going to read War of Wars, England versus France, over a wide swath of the entire Western Hemisphere for a long time, with signature wars and events being just small parts of the larger operations. And also the Gods of Deception, a gigantic novel about Alger-Hiss and one particular family, the generations of which were involved in the Red Scare and Alger-Hiss, maybe the Nixon administration. I don't actually know the ambit of this book. No idea at all. I will be doing that for the first time in March, and then I will read it again in April when it comes out. And one thing I won't be doing is this, because Lukas threatened to send me a box of scorpions in the mail if I did. If I, as he put it, sullied the March of the Mammoths with a book that's only 971 pages long, or 771 pages long. They're sticklers. Actually not. The key is only that I think the hosts would probably agree with me that the key is mainly that you pick those egregiously enormous books. Pick one of them off your shelf. You've got company here. You've got good company, very good company. Go and subscribe to these channels, and you'll see what good company they are, and that helps a lot. You'll be able to watch their videos. You'll know that in the month of March, other people are also working their way through monstrously huge books. That's a comfort. There's a comfort in that. So I'll leave links to their videos down below. I just wanted to make this video sort of letting you know what I'm thinking about these gigantic books in March, and encourage you to do it. If you must have seen, if you've been on BookTube for any amount of time, you've seen previous years of March of the Mammoths. You must remember how much fun it is. Well, it's all the more fun if you sign up for one. Look on your shelves right now. Which books there are over 800 pages that you either haven't read or that you've been meaning to reread? I can almost guarantee there'll be one or two. March is the time. Tell them that their time is coming. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up and console the bean, who really wants the rain to stop. Poor little thing. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.